weekend coffee chats on Sunday with me. So this is a series I'm running in the month of May, 15 minutes every Sunday morning, just to, share some of the financial habits and behaviors to transform your financial life. So, in case you haven't met me before, well, my name is Sharon Singh Sidhu, and I am a certified financial education instructor and also a leadership trainer. So, in my corporate role, I'm a leadership facilitator for workshops, and I also run my own training company called 2.0, and this is where I share, basic financial. Information content, but also more importantly, and what I found is the habits, behaviors, and belief systems that we hold to help us to transform our financial lives. So today it's all about the three must-dos before we start investing. But before I go into that, I just want to wish everyone who's watching the live or the rebroadcast a happy Mother's Day if you're a mom, and to enjoy your Sunday. For those of you who are watching on Saturday evening at in Eastern Standard Time, then I guess you'll be seeing this probably a day before. Nonetheless, let's go straight into the topic for today, which is the three must-dos before you start investing. So the thing is, when we talk about investing, most of us jump straight into the content, right? And we talk about things like, okay, let's identify what your financial goals are. Let's look at what your risk appetite is like, what your time horizon for investing is like, and then we go into stock allocation rules and all of that. So that's really, again, content, which is important, right? Don't get me wrong. Of course, it is important for us to have the sound financial basic and content in order to also know what to do and do the right thing. But I like to go even before that, and this was a mistake that I made myself. I always thought that, the good practice is once I started working, I should set aside savings and I should start investing in the long term for my retirement. And that's good. And we do need to start to set aside retirement savings. And the sooner we do it, the better. The sooner we invest, of course, the better, because then we take advantage of compounding effects of time. But before that, I just wanted to make sure that you don't make the same mistake I did, which was that I didn't know these three things that I needed to do before I started investing. So, number one, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that before you start investing, you set aside what we call periodic savings. So everything I'm sharing today is written on Karen McCall's book, Financial Recovery. So if you want more details, I would really highly recommend that you grab a copy of her book and read it. And she talks about this. The first thing that we need to do before we start investing is to set aside periodic savings. So what are periodic savings? Periodic savings are the savings we set aside for all those expected, unexpected expenses. So we know all this, right? I mean, somehow, some way, every month there would be some expense that you never saw and never planned for that would come up. And then what happens? You actually need to find the extra funds from your savings in order to pay for that. And if we don't set aside periodic savings and we don't have the extra buffer, and all of our money has been pushed into a long-term investment, then what could actually happen, and this happened to me, is you end up charging it to your credit card because you don't have the extra buffer. And that is the first step towards debt. And we know that if you want to have financial security, and you want to have peace of mind financially, then debt does not help you to achieve that. So in order to stabilize a debt situation, or if you're currently in debt, then in order to stabilize your debt situation, you've got to somehow find $10, $20 and set it aside every month, because these so-called unexpected expenses They are expected. We need to be proactive and plan for these unexpected expenses. And the way to do that is to set aside a little amount of money every single month and put it away. And this money is money that you should not feel guilty about spending, because you set it aside and it's meant to be spent for all of these unexpected expenses. So first thing to do is to set aside your periodic savings, and that, again, the goal here is for you to stabilize debt, to make sure that you don't go into debt. Okay, because you have not set aside a buffer of savings for these unexpected expenses that, in reality, we know they are expected. They tend to happen. They are things like, irregular expenses that come up. But we know that we need to set this aside, because we know these are things that happen to all of us in life, these unexpected expenses. So step one, periodic savings. The second thing that you need to do is to set aside what we call safety net savings. And safety net savings are money you set aside with the purpose of ensuring that if you have a loss of income or a reduction in income, you have a safety net, right, to draw from. And that is especially relevant right now with the pandemic, with people losing jobs, having their incomes cut, hours reduced. This is exactly the time where you will tap into your safety net savings. So the goal here is really to protect your income. Okay, so step two is to make sure you have safety net savings. Without safety net savings, what's going to happen is you're going to end up again charging your day-to-day expenses to a credit card, or getting into debt, or getting into a very stressful situation because you can't tide over this period where you have a loss of income. So that's number two. Then number three, so this is after you have done, and this is sequential, right? You've got to do number one first, set aside your periodic savings, and then number two, set aside your safety net savings, and then the third is when you get to the investment or long-term savings. So the goal of these investments and long-term savings, which most of us are probably most familiar with, is for our financial security. So these are long-term plans like saving for your retirement, saving for down payment on a house, saving for your kids' college education. So the thing is that, so the mistake I made was I plowed a lot of my savings into these long-term investment savings, leaving very little and sometimes none at all for periodic and safety net savings. So what happens then is that when you're met with an unexpected expense, or there is a loss of income, you're unable to pay for those day-to-day recurring and essential expenses, and then you dip into debt, or you charge it to a credit card. And it's really hard. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're talking about financial security, you cannot have financial security when you don't have savings. You cannot invest if you don't have a surplus of money and savings to invest. And debt is the single biggest thing that is going to prevent you from accumulating that surplus and savings that you need in order to invest and ensure that you have a secure financial future. So without points one and two in place, it's really not a stable and sustainable situation for point three to happen. So let's recap. First thing we need to do is to set aside periodic savings, and these are savings that are meant to be used. These are for all your unexpected expenses that are bound to happen to all of us, that we didn't plan for, we forgot, or we did not foresee. So periodic savings is something you need to put in place, and the goal of periodic savings is to stabilize to stabilize debt. Then the second thing is to put aside safety net savings, and safety net savings are for the purpose of protecting income in the event that you have a income reduction or a loss of income. And then point number three is that's when you then set aside money to put in your investment and long-term savings. Without the first two, it's hard to sustain the third, because what will end up happening is either you go into debt when you can't pay your day-to-day bills, or you pull out from your investments in order to cover your immediate financial needs. And that again is not wise, because you often end up losing money when you pull out from your investments. or your retirement account, or whatever it is that you've set aside for your longer term investment. So those are the three things that I would say that you need to make sure you have in place before you start investing. And in order to recap all of that and have a quick reference, as with all of these sessions, I will have a worksheet that will go along with it, which you can download. And again, I always remind people and encourage people to write those goals down, because writing really helps you to, number one, remember it, and number two, to make sure that you regenerate the idea in your mind and make it more likely that you will achieve those goals and make those things happen. So that's really the end of today's short 15-minute weekend coffee chat. And do share this video if you found it useful. Share it with someone you think who might benefit from this information. And I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.